Please welcome Tamara Erde. And to lead this conversation, please, Udi Aloni. Thank you for being here. Thank you both.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. Usually I'm speaking too much, but today I'm not going to speak at all because... No, this day is your thing. But, and we really want to hear more from the audience. But I want to start a little question from the end. Fear, that's what you think is the main things that make Israeli function? Because she put fear and dreams, and this is kind of was the conclusion. And the dreams part I understood, and the fear is what I want to ask about.
Yeah, I think that for me, at least, when I look at the generation that funded Israel, like the generation of my grandfather, I think it is a main thing that led them, and it was really in a conquest with the dream. I think that the fact that they came with this tragedy of the Holocaust that was going on in parallel, and I think it was something that was very crucial in their way of thinking. I don't think it is fear that is the reason for things going on in Israel today, mainly. I think today, of course, it is also used as an excuse for many things, but I think that within the generation of the people that founded Israel, it was something that played a much bigger role than what they thought it did or what they were conscious of.
I felt that the way you construct the film is, in one hand, is very humble, and the other hand is very ambitious. Both. It's humble because it's your own little story going to a search for a grandpa and his images. And we all know those from Roland Barthes and all that, how much the photos, it was there. But in the other hand, it's very ambitious because you go all over the land in a way. And when you toured the land, what did you feel? Did you learn something about Israel that you didn't know before? But as an Israeli that live in exile in a way, you came back through your grandpa, but you met people from the present. There is anything after this film that you felt different about the Israel you know?
Yes, I think it was really the fact that I came back to it, that I tried to see it all the time in this parallel of his view and what he was expecting it to be and what he dreamt it to be and what I see in it today that was really interesting for me. So it was not like just coming from my point of view of today, of the exiled I am, and just judging it from this distance, but it was this triangle that was constructed during the film of like me and my vision from outside, but also the vision of him, like with the vision I saw in his photos and I discovered along this journey with the reality of today. So it was like this timely triangle that was new for me.
Yes, I just don't know how many of you saw the film before this one, but I found it fascinating to see a film after the other of really Israelis that left Israel, that they are still very attached to Israel, but suddenly they tell the story from outside. And I think for you, it's almost like a topic you can open, those Israelis that are in exile, but are totally connected to...
Eventually all our films will be of people from the outside making it about Israel. So that,
really?
No, I hope not.
No, because I felt a bit like her, you know, I felt that I left Israel, but I never left Israel. You know, I'm always go back and I'm shooting and I'm care and I'm demonstrating and it was interesting for me that you use the picture of your grandpa for you to come back, like you always need for yourself an excuse. And there is a meaning for the caravan, like to be a wanderer in your own country, or?
Yes, it was really this idea, both to be a wanderer in my own country like my grandfather was back then, but also it was, I mean, a caravan is kind of a home, and it's kind of both a home and a no home. it's like the home you have when you don't really have a home anymore. And so it was really also this meaning for me, like coming to discover it with this idea of not having a home anymore, and yet wanting to establish something, some new connection, or finding something.
I want to say two things that kind of interested me there, and then I would like to have the audience asking questions. But really, it was fascinating to imagine these two photographers, the Palestinian young woman and her grandpa, and almost like I felt as somebody who came from visual art originally, I would like to see an exhibition with the two photos together, really, to see the two different gaze on this land of two people who claim that in a way they're not political, but just because who they are, they're very political. And the other things is, again, the newcomers, the Shomer HaTzair, the young people, and then the guy from Argentina. Did it bother you to hear how this guy in one hand speak so harshly about Argentina and how they don't respect any human rights, and in the same time he is abusing the rights of the Palestinian in a way? Did he see? Did you feel the disconnection in his?
Of course, but that's what I found interesting in this character, because he had this, in a way, complexity of both recognizing something that is wrong and yet maintaining it and explaining to himself why it is okay. I found it much more interesting than other characters who don't see this, I mean, who don't have at all this conscious, in a way. And also, even that's why along the scene, because when I came, it was very, like we see in the beginning of the scene, but of course there's a lot of material that is not in the editing, but that went in the same direction of someone who is very, like, kind of angry and assured and everything. And then in the end, he starts telling you this story about this grandfather, and you realize that he does understand or sees in a way that something is wrong, and yet he decides to not to ignore it, to put it aside. So I think it is this complexity that is very interesting. I think that because this is what maintains also this situation today. It's not only the not seeing it; it's how we see it, and yet we accept it. And
seeing and not seeing in the same time.
And choosing not to see. Yeah.
The audience, please. Yes.
What made you interested in your grandfather's photography and want to follow where he went? Like, what gave you the motive for it or the reason?
So I think for me it was both. It was both the personal curiosity and the political curiosity. I mean, I knew most of his photographs at first only from what was hanged on my mother's walls and in our albums that were very more the family photos or portraits of my grandmother and my family. I knew less of his more political photographs. And when I discovered them about 3 years ago, when I started thinking about the film, and I went to the archives, to the museum where they were stocked, and they decided to begin and scan those photos, it was the first time that I really discovered his way of seeing, of photographing the country in the beginning, and his way of seeing it. And it was then that I decided to mix both of them and do a film that would be both on a very personal and family level, like to discover who he really was and what I can learn about this thing, because as we see there were some family taboos about it, but also really questioning his way of seeing things in the larger context, in the political context.
Hi. In a way, what you're doing in the film is basically what your grandfather did as a photographer. You're documenting, you're trying to capture an atmosphere, the people, and all that. So I wonder if you ever thought about it, the way that you're documenting in comparison to what your grandpa did long time ago, and how did you approach it? Like what did you if you tried to remote yourself from the way that he tried to do it, or did you develop in another way?
Yeah, I think for me, yes, for me it was part of the idea of the film. It was really to kind of make a meeting, an impossible meeting in the reality, but a meeting still between our both visions and point of view, and really to try and follow his footsteps, but in a very assumed way of my vision today. So it was really this idea of how I see things today and how he saw things back then. And I think for me, what I was thinking a lot about how to kind of make this meeting happen. And one of the ways I found it for me was interesting was this idea of screening the photos also on today's reality, because of course it is my choice of the places, it is my choice of what photos, but so it's completely, in a way, I assume that it is my vision of the things, and yet it creates this kind of meeting between his vision and what I see of it today. So.
Tamara, thank you so much for this fabulous perspective and this fabulous film. You'll have to excuse our audience. 10:30 at night is very late on the Upper West Side. It's like really like past most of people's bedtimes.
There is a curfew in the Upper West Side in this time.
Nothing's open anymore. That's a complete lockdown. Udi, thank you very much for leading this conversation.